Tonight, the highly contagious coronavirus variant from South Africa has arrived here in the U.S. The first cases found in 2 adults with no recent travel history. Health officials concerned it may be more vaccine resistant. Where the troubling discovery was made. Also, COVID in nursing homes, a stunning new report uncovering thousands more deaths than we knew. The war erupting over the COVID vaccine, country versus country, and the AstraZeneca vaccine pending approval. Why health officials say people over 65 shouldn't get it. The deadly chemical leak at a food plant, what we've learned. The monster winter storms in the west, massive mudslides, new evacuations, and the major concern tonight. As the top Republican in the House meets with former President Trump in Florida, Nancy Pelosi blasting the GOP leadership over the controversial congresswoman who has supported QAnon and has been seen on camera berating a Parkland shooting survivor. And Pelosi's warning that, quote, the enemy is within the House. NBC News exclusive, President Biden vowed to reunite families separated at the border. Why is his task force now delayed? And the retail crisis. What does it mean for your store credit cards?
This is NBC Nightly News with Lester Holt.
Good evening. The effort to vaccinate our way out of the deep hole that is the COVID pandemic potentially just got more complicated today with the discovery of a South African strain of the virus in the United States. 2 strangers who haven't traveled anywhere becoming the first to test positive for the variant. One of several mutations of the virus raising the hackles on health experts who are trying to understand if they're more threatening and how effective vaccines are against them. And on that note, the demand for vaccination still far exceeding supplies in this country tonight. But in a few minutes, we're going to take you to a state getting attention for a vaccine rollout that appears to be working. How they've cracked the code, that's coming up. But first, let's get the latest on these virus variants. Here's Miguel Almaguer.
Discovered in South Carolina, tonight the CDC confirms at least 2 Americans with no recent travel history and no connection to one another have now become infected with the South African variant of the virus. While it's unclear how effective Pfizer and Moderna's vaccines are against the variant, another drug maker, Novavax, says their vaccine appears to be less than 50% effective against the South African strain.
If we continue to have a slower than expected vaccine rollout, the newer strains could start to become the dominant strain, and that would be a disaster for the country.
The vaccine rollout is facing its own hurdles.
It's not easy to get in.
Even with additional supercenter sites, it will likely be months before every American who wants a vaccine can get one.
There's 3 things that are important: vaccines, vaccines, vaccines.
Near Los Angeles, so-called vaccine chasers are camping overnight, waiting hours with no appointment, hoping any extra doses will be given away to those nearby.
If there's any chance I can get it, it's totally worth staying in line for all day.
With scientists finding more COVID mutations, including a number of new strains in California, vaccines are worth their weight in gold.
Barriers aren't stopping us.
During an Oregon snowstorm, these stranded healthcare workers had only 4 hours until their doses expired, so they walked the highway, vaccinating lucky drivers.
For all the rules and regulations around how we can and can't use and administer the vaccine, the most important rule of all right now is don't waste anything.
Miguel, I know you're at Dodger Stadium there in L.A. where more doses are on the way. What's it look like?
Well, yeah, Lester, next week, L.A. County is getting 188,000 doses, but many of those are for folks who need their second booster shot. Lester?
Looks like quite the operation behind you, Miguel. Thanks. A shocking new finding by officials in New York. The state health department severely undercounted the number of COVID deaths among nursing home residents. Kristen Dahlgren has details for us.
Tonight, New York State accused of undercounting COVID nursing home deaths by as much as 50%. The results of a months-long investigation by the state attorney general. The scathing 76-page report finding the state didn't report nursing home residents who died of COVID-19 in hospitals, while claiming some nursing homes failed to isolate COVID-positive residents. Dawn Best's mom died in a Long Island nursing home last April.
Terrible. Never should have happened. Never should have happened.
She says her mom died of dehydration in a home overrun with COVID after New York Governor Andrew Cuomo opened nursing homes to COVID patients to free up hospital beds.
A third grader would know not to send COVID patients into our nursing home.
Cuomo declined to comment, but in a statement, New York State's health commissioner denied an undercount, saying the Department of Health has consistently reported numbers based on the place of death. Tonight, New York State Senator Gustavo Rivera urging the governor to release accurate data, which he says they've been requesting for months, adding families who lost loved ones deserve honest answers, something Dawn Best is still searching for. Kristen Dahlgren, NBC News.
Europe is set to approve another COVID vaccine tomorrow as the continent finds itself in a battle over supplies that some are comparing to the Hunger Games. Here's Keir Simmons.
Europe is descending into a vaccine war. Germany questioning whether Britain's AstraZeneca vaccine is effective for over 65s. Okay. The UK's Prime Minister hitting back.
I don't agree with that.
Tonight, frustrated Germans facing shortages until April.
We should have ordered more.
And regions of Spain already suspending vaccinations. It's a crisis of Europe's own making, placing orders late, set to finally approve AstraZeneca's vaccine tomorrow. Today, Pfizer and AstraZeneca in crisis meetings. The European Union furious at AstraZeneca's 60% cut in its supply targets because of production challenges.
They must honor their obligations.
The fight reopening wounds from Brexit. Britain has vaccinated 12% of its population, Europe only 2%. Now the EU threatening to restrict vaccine exports unless it gets doses from UK plants. British newspapers and lawmakers branding that blackmail. And as Europe's wealthy nations fight, the developing world is left to watch.
A me-first approach leaves the world's poorest and most vulnerable people at risk.
And tonight, some in Europe turning to Russia for a vaccine. COVID upending lives and international alliances. Lester?
All right, Keir Simmons tonight. Thanks very much. And back here at home, at least 6 people were killed today by a liquid nitrogen leak at a poultry plant in Gainesville, Georgia, northeast of Atlanta. At least 3 others are in critical condition and others injured. A company official said a nitrogen line may have been ruptured. State and federal officials are investigating. Thousands remain under evacuation orders in central California tonight after heavy rains caused dangerous mudslides. Steve Patterson now with details.
Tonight, the natural beauty of California's central coast shredded by devastating mudslides. A series of powerful winter storms pounded the mountains with a deluge of rain and snow, sending debris cascading down in rivers. Officials say 25 structures were damaged in Monterey County, and at least 1 person was injured. Thousands there remained under evacuation orders and without power.
This is the most water I've seen come at once.
The severe weather spawned by an atmospheric river, or a massive ribbon of moisture that has become a hallmark of destructive climate change out west.
2020 was one after another, and this is like the sequel.
Tonight, the fear refocused on Southern California, with heavy rain in the forecast. A network of burn scars left over from a year of the worst wildfires on record could lead to catastrophic landslides. Steve Patterson, NBC News.
President Biden has vowed to reunite migrant families separated at the southern border under that controversial Trump administration policy. But NBC's Jacob Soboroff has exclusive details tonight on why that effort is getting off to a slow start.
Over 3 years have passed since the Trump administration started separating thousands of migrant children from their parents at the border, placing them alone in detention, some in cages like this. Hondurans Alvaro and Alvaro Jr., like hundreds of other families, remain separated and are waiting for President Biden's promised relief.
I wonder what you would say to people who have forgotten that this happened to so many people.
I would tell them that it's very difficult. It's very complicated.
According to 3 sources with direct knowledge of the plan, the promised task force, which has now been twice delayed, will be an interagency effort led by the DHS secretary and supported by secretaries of state and Health and Human Services. All families separated crossing here at the border during the 4 years of the Trump administration will be covered by the group's work. But how and where the families will be reunited is still to be determined. The president said those responsible could face criminal charges, but that'll be up to his DOJ. Today, for hundreds of families still separated, the trauma is ongoing. As Alvaro described to me from Honduras, where he was deported back to when we connected late last year.
An officer told me, "Give me your children's things because you are going to different places." And I didn't know what was going to happen to my child.
Alvaro Jr., who was 6 when they were separated, was taken to a shelter. After 2 weeks, he was sent to California to live with an uncle whom he'd never met.
Do you get to talk to your dad like this a lot on video?
Yeah.
What do you want to see the Biden administration's family separation task force do?
There has to be an injection of resources. They've been denied that and traumatized and hurt.
Trauma that will last a lifetime. Jacob Soboroff, NBC News, Otay Mesa, California.
Top Democrats tonight are calling on Republican leaders to condemn a congresswoman over past online comments seeming to endorse violence. Plus, former President Trump holding a key meeting in Florida. Peter Alexander has more.
Former President Trump tonight hosting top House Republican Kevin McCarthy at Mar-a-Lago, discussing how to win back the House in 2022. But it comes as McCarthy is facing a new backlash over freshman Republican Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene, who's promoted false QAnon conspiracy theories. A CNN report revealing in since-deleted online posts not reviewed by NBC News that Greene, before joining Congress, liked comments calling for violence against Democratic leaders and claimed Nancy Pelosi was guilty of treason, punishable by death. Pelosi today suggesting more security for lawmakers.
The enemy is within the House of Representatives. It means that we have members of Congress who want to bring guns on the floor and have threatened violence on other members of Congress.
Why are you supporting red flag gun laws?
Then there's this video Greene posted heckling Parkland shooting survivor and gun control advocate David Hogg in 2019.
I carry a gun for protection for myself, and you are using your lobby and the money behind it and the kids to try to take away my Second Amendment rights.
Fred Gutenberg, whose 14-year-old daughter Jamie was killed at Parkland, responding.
She's telling them outright, I have a gun. You need to remove her. She has no place in Congress.
Greene did not respond to our request for comment, but tweeted, I've had teams of people manage my pages. Some did not represent my views. Among Greene's Georgia constituents, NBC's Blaine Alexander finding mixed reaction.
Everybody has the right to have an opinion. That's what makes America great.
I think she's a lunatic. Like, legitimately, I think she's insane.
Kevin McCarthy is calling Greene's comments deeply disturbing, saying they'll have a conversation about them. Lester?
All right, Peter Alexander, thanks. Now to that state we mentioned earlier that's becoming an unlikely success in the COVID vaccine rollout at a time when so many others are struggling. Let's get more on it from Stephanie Gosk in West Virginia.
Greenwich Care Home got a much-anticipated visit today.
All right, you ready?
This small assisted living center in rural West Virginia isn't getting its first dose. This is the second.
You're done.
In fact, the state says by the end of the week, every long-term care facility will have had 2 vaccine rounds.
There are states in this country that aren't even close to getting the first doses. What does it feel like to have West Virginia basically blow everybody away?
Feels great. West Virginia has a long history of bucking people. So, and that's pretty much what occurred.
The state decided early on not to join a federal program that partnered with chains CVS and Walgreens to vaccinate long-term care clinics, instead relying on a network of local pharmacists like Tally and Ken Reed, a husband-wife team who own 5 drugstores.
They seem to trust us quite a bit.
Together, they've been driving early mornings and late nights to small rural towns. At home, the kitchen table piled high with paperwork.
There's nothing like being able to help your neighbor, and that's why we went in the profession to begin with.
A mostly rural state with a large elderly population, West Virginia was tagged early on as a place that might struggle with vaccinations. But now it is being held up as a shining example of what works. The CDC says the state has used 81% of its vaccine allotment, the highest in the country, while 11 states have used less than half.
We knew we had to become agile. We had to learn as we go, because in these dynamic events, it's really impossible to predict what's going to happen next.
Clay Marsh is West Virginia's COVID czar, a critical care doctor tapped early on to lead the effort.
You said you have to be agile to face this crisis, but it also sounds like, from what you're telling me, you've got to be creative.
Of course. We've created a West Virginia N95 equivalent mask. We have brought up our own PCR testing, our own antibody testing. So we are a scrappy state that's resilient.
They also knew when to ask for help, tapping the National Guard for logistics support and reaching out to a private company to help design a new registration website.
How exciting is it for you to be talking about this success story? from your state?
I'm really proud, but I'm not surprised. Our finest hour is shining because when it comes to an opportunity to come together, to help each other, to lift each other, that's what West Virginia does best.
Stephanie, how is West Virginia doing on the actual supply of vaccines?
Like so many states, Lester, they would love to get more. They receive about 24,000 doses a week, and they have the capacity to administer 4 times that. Lester?
Well, maybe an example for others to follow. Stephanie, thanks. In just 60 seconds, changing the game for GameStop, why small investors who drove up the stock price and saw huge gains are now crying foul. Back with the battle surrounding GameStop, sales of the retailer's stocks halted after online investors took on Wall Street heavyweights. Jolene Kent explains.
Tonight, backlash growing against Robinhood, the trading app popular with armchair investors, after the company suddenly restricted the purchase of red-hot GameStop shares, sending the stock price plunging.
It's infuriating.
Bradley Lewis, a member of the Reddit forum Wall Street Bets, says he's made more than $8,000 so far after buying 62 shares of GameStop 2 weeks ago.
They're basically saying, we'll let the big boys keep playing, but the little guys have to sit this one out now.
This comes after many Reddit users took on major investors and hedge funds trying to profit off the struggling video game retailer, betting the stock price would plummet. Instead, these Reddit users bought the stock, sending it surging. Today, Robinhood also restricting trading of BlackBerry and Bed Bath & Beyond in light of recent volatility. Meanwhile, major investment firms could continue trading. The sudden stoppage triggering rare bipartisan outrage from Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez to Senator Ted Cruz.
All of a sudden, the billionaires and some hedge funds are yelling because they're not the only ones who make money when the manipulation works.
And late today, Robinhood saying they will allow restricted trading of GameStop to resume tomorrow. Lester?
All right, Jolene Kent tonight. Thanks. Up next, what you need to know about your credit as so many businesses close. With so many stores closing amid the pandemic, what does it mean for your credit? Here's Vicki Nguyen.
2020 was a gut punch for many retailers already struggling before COVID. Lord & Taylor, America's first department store, closed permanently, while other brand names filed for bankruptcy. An estimated 8,000 stores closed.
What does that mean for your store credit card?
If you have rewards on those store cards and they're at risk of being shut down, you want to use those rewards as soon as possible.
Kim Palmer at NerdWallet says stores can cancel your credit card without notice, but they should send a letter to inform you.
Does it hurt your credit score?
It can hurt your credit score, and that's because it can reduce your credit history.
She says other factors have a bigger impact on your score, mainly paying on time, keeping a balance that's no more than 30% of your available credit, and how long you've had a credit card.
Does it help you to carry a balance on your store credit card?
This is a big myth. Debt is very expensive on a store card because store cards do tend to have high interest rates.
Even if the store has closed, you're still on the hook for your balance. Credit experts say go to annualcreditreport.com once a year to view your credit score.
Lester, one more tip. When it comes to which credit card to choose, go for cash back cards. Those could be more helpful than travel cards right now, and the money really adds up. Lester?
Up next, 35 years after Challenger, I speak with a space visionary. Where were you on this day 35 years ago, the day the space shuttle Challenger exploded, killing all 7 crew members? Tonight, I look back and what it taught us about our thirst for knowledge and exploration.
By 1986, space travel, it seemed, was becoming routine.
People no longer could recite the names of astronauts who were going up in the shuttle. And then that was viewed as some measure of disinterest.
Except among Challenger's crew was the first civilian to launch, New Hampshire schoolteacher Krista McAuliffe. Her students gathered to watch.
We had party hats, we had little noisemakers. It was a party. We were so thrilled and happy.
But then moments after liftoff,
Challenger, go and throttle up. Challenger, go and throttle up.
Came the unthinkable. Charles Bolden had returned from space himself just days earlier.
Were you worried about the future of the American space program after this disaster?
Most of us
asked ourselves the question, first of all, is this something that we wanted to continue doing, and did we want to be